When I asked you like kind of the way that you thought about it, you were like independent musicians need to have like a full stack mentality, and that's the way that you approach what it is that you do. So tell us about what you mean when you say being, approaching music with a full stack mindset or being a full stack musician.
I think it kind of starts with like definitionally. It's like if you're independent and like, okay, that doesn't mean individual, right? It doesn't mean like you are on your own exactly. But it does mean that this starts and ends with you. Whatever, if it's gonna be if it's gonna wind up being a team of sorts, well, it has to start with with your plan and your vision. And so it's kind of like, well, you have to know how to create a plan or vision, which means you have to know what's out there to be even done in the first place. Most of the musicians I know are not doing it. Maybe they are acting as a hobbyist from time to time, but I think if you were to ask them, they would say they're taking it seriously and would like to be the biggest artist in the world. They would like that. So it's kind of like, well, there is a road to run between here and that dream that won't just show up for you. So kind of when I say like the full stack viewpoint, it's like, well, you should have a plan you should be interested in at least having the next few lily pads figured out of like, well, how do I get to my next show? Or how do I get to the point of like releasing a vinyl record or something? And even those two things, maybe years of wondering and wandering and trying stuff, before you figure out like the basics of, the financial end and working with people and practicing or whatever thing you're trying to do. But yeah, I guess to wrap that up, like there's just making music, and then there's interfacing it with the world, and that interfacing it with the world is a huge thing to figure out. It's a huge Rubik's cube to solve.
Why do you think like the full stack mentality or approach is important to embrace as an independent artist?
Well, there's sort of like a helplessness if you don't, I guess. Like, I don't want to denigrate anybody's situation. This is obviously just my philosophy, but I'm kind of like, if you're a musician, you better be able to produce a recording. Like, you better be able to be a musician and be like, I make music. Here was the music I made. It is complete. It is done. I've thought about every corner of it. And there's so many people who, they can write a fantastic song, but they, for some reason, block the rest of the process away and say, I can't do that. I have to hand it off to 86 different people. And it's kind of like, if you have that mentality, you're just, it's a huge limitation. And you're kind of trading in, I guess, technical skills for maybe like networking skills or other skills, which I don't know. I guess I was born into a life where I was more interested in like tinkering with things and making music and producing it, recording it, and doing that whole thing and marketing it. I guess I was just naturally interested in doing everything. But looking at the other side of the fence, I'm like, man, how does everyone not have a natural interest in this? If because when I'm looking at what I want to do, it's so tantalizing to me that everything along the way is also tantalizing. Like now it's fun to do oh my God, I have to register as a business in Tennessee. That'll be kind of fun now. It doesn't sound like a headache. It sounds inspiring. The road is long and strange no matter what. So embrace learning that map.
So you mentioned this idea of having a plan. And I really like what I hear is kind of these two kind of big pieces of it, right? One is like creating a plan, which kind of behind that is like you kind of mentioned, like looking around, like research, right? Like assessing like maybe what you would model the plan after. Like you're not going to be the first person to do this, right? The second piece is once you have that plan, like kind of this accountability piece, you have the plan. Okay, now you actually have to execute on the plan that you made. Everybody's plan is going to be specific to them. However, there are probably common components that exist of like a good structured plan or a way to assess whether or not you've made like a cohesive and effective plan that's worth trying to execute. So I'm wondering if you can speak to that as well as like the accountability piece I really love because it's like you can have a great plan, but if you don't do anything, well, it's really just almost like kind of almost like a dream, like, something that just passed. So the other thing is ideas for like the challenges of maintaining accountability to the plan also, along with like kind of this sense of, as you mentioned, like tantalizing things come up along the way. You're in the process of executing a plan, something else comes up. And now you're like, oh, is this worth adapting the plan? Should the plan change? To what extent, how do I know when it should be like ignore that shiny thing and keep going, or that shiny thing is worthwhile and I need to actually kind of pivot my plan some. So I know I just asked you a lot there.
Well, okay. I might have like a lot of non-answers on this conversation, but because I almost see a plan as a trick of the mind, or maybe self-accountability. I'm just like, well, we said we're doing this to ourselves. That just gets you out of the chair and living life. You know, if my plan is to play a show for the first time, that's going to lead me to, oh, should I in your monitors? Should that be a thing? Oh, now I'm learning about that. Or, oh, I working with this drummer and I'm like, wow, I've never played with a drummer. This is got to learn that and whatever. And that all builds until the show, which is, I don't know, maybe 6 months away. And by the time you're there, it's not even like you don't have a graduation party. I mean, actually, you kind of do sometimes. You might have a nice night out right after that show to like celebrate. But by the time that happens, you're not remembering like sitting at your desk being like, I want to play a show this year. You're like, whoa, I'm a musician. Oh, we got offered the next show, and you outgrow these plans. And I guess what I'm trying to distinguish here is like there's someone who lives and dies by like to-do lists or something, and then there's people who are more like instinctively moving through life and like finding inspiration and then finding more inspiration and then chasing a good thing that emerges from another thing, and it just living that like musician lifestyle and letting it like divine itself into something you're proud of and continually proud of and is fulfilling, because like there's definitely been many times in my years past where I was like, man, I would be so happy, like I don't need more than this. If I press my album to vinyl, like I could be done with this and be happy about it. And now I've done that 7 times, you know? And it's like that little mini dream doesn't have much currency to me now. Not that the gratitude isn't there, but what I'm circling here is like the inspiration and the motivation is a little bit inherent, I would think. Like if you can execute a plan for your music, I don't really buy that you're having a great time making music. It's like that always confused me. It's like, oh, if you love making music so much, yet hate everything about it and everything about doing it, like I don't really know that you want to do this very much, and maybe and I think no one says that enough to where it's like, hey, if you're laying plan after plan and just can't find motivation, can't hold yourself accountable to it, no one's gonna tar and feather you for for being like, maybe I don't like this very much.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point to be like, maybe you're pointing yourself in a direction that you don't actually want to be in on a deeper level.
When you make your first song, right? Everyone kind of looks at you and it's like they almost put it on your plate for you, like, oh, like, are you gonna do some shows? Or like, oh, do you think you're gonna like shop this around? And the world starts to kind of ask, like, how serious are you? And I think some people can get pulled into that direction and not ever wonder, like, wait, I just wanted to like make beats, and that was literally it. Like, if it bloomed into something cool, that would be sweet. But like, I didn't come out here saying like I will be on the Grammy stage in 10 years, like, and you can just give yourself a permission to be like, all right, I don't need to do that or think of it that way.
So it sounds like I like how you kind of like there are two types of people in a way, is what you said a moment ago, right? There are like to-do list people and there are more kind of intuitive people. And it sounds like you're describing yourself as the latter, as a more intuitive person. And I'm wondering if you can talk to how you connect and learn to listen to your intuition, because I do think that a lot of us have better intuition than we think that we do, and we second guess it a lot. And it sounds like that's something you've learned to navigate really well for yourself.
Yeah, well, we might be backing up into some pretty like meta, like non-musical things, right? Because it's kind of like somebody with really really struggling with their mental health, let's say, probably doesn't have the most transparent understanding of themselves or reality at that moment to breathe through life and let inspiration flow, let's say. So like, I guess my point there is to say, okay, how do you be a more intuitive musician? Well, part of it is like clearing your mind and knowing like what are you doing here? and what do you want? And like it's a tug of war, like for myself, I would think for everyone. But there's times all the time I'm like, is this a good stress or a bad stress? Because like if I got into music to just be beat down and dragged by, like on the road or whatever, that's not a good thing for me. And if you don't know what's good for you and what is, I think that's a tricky scenario. But like for example, this tour I went on last fall was a huge endeavor, and it put me in a lot of debt, which was somewhat self-imposed. Like I could have maybe avoided that if I was more frugal, or like, really nailed the sort of Tetris of that. But I embraced it and I was like, we'll figure it out later. And this is the year where I'm figuring it out, and it's being figured out. It's going pretty well, but it's like it's really life being like, is it this important to you to be playing music? And it's like thoughtlessly, yes. Cuz that was probably the best time of my life, that tour. So it's just like, to try to bring it back to your question, like all the time you're facing those trade-offs. Is preparing for this show worth it? I'm so stressed, I'm so scared. Or learning all this music for this other band, or they want this beat by Tuesday, like, and now I'm in this hellhole, you know? Am I happy about that? Can I distinguish like this is good stress, like I'm in the gym right now? Cuz the alternative to all of this is just like watching Netflix every day and having like a pretty low key life. I wouldn't be feeling the stress every day, but I probably would be trading in that stress for sort of a low grade existential dread, you know?
What's an indicator for you between what's like positive or productive versus unneeded or unnecessary stress in your life?
It's kind of like when you're in the wrong relationship, and you just know in your heart of hearts, you know, like it's only you saying it to yourself in a certain moment of the day where you're like, I just keep imagining myself not in this relationship and it feels really nice. You're talking to your friends, they're kind of like, seems like it's going good for you, or your parents like them, and you kind of are saying, yeah, it is going good. And then but you know that true feeling of like, man, it does feel good to be released of this. And that is a whole, again, the backing up into these sort of meta concepts. But like, that is extremely hard, even for me, to knowing that about myself. Like, it's hard to feel that and then execute on it. But that is kind of like a similar compass, I think. Like sometimes you're in the middle of a musical thing and you're in the middle of some slog or some scary thing, or you're like having a bout with stage fright. Like there was a moment on the tour where we were in San Diego. It's like all of a sudden, for whatever reason, there was just this dip in my confidence where I was like, holy shit, does all of my music sound like the Wiggles? And I'm just now realizing, you know what I mean? And I was like talking to my keyboardist, being like, all of a sudden it sounds kind of fucking horrible to be like, am I really going to stand by this stuff I made and show it to hundreds more people? And you just know when that's a real voice or like the devil, whatever you want to call it. And I don't know. Again, so I'm not really giving you a practical answer, but I'm kind of saying you have probably felt that in your life before, of like what really, like, oh, you're really in trouble, but you're quieting it. Sometimes there's that level of stress, but you know you're actually acting as like a hero in your own little timeline, and it's like, no, this is just the dragon I'm slaying, and then I save the world or whatever.